Hello, I'm William Stewart, co-founder of Telios. Welcome back on this verse-by-verse study of the book of First John. Such a rich book, so simple in vocabulary, yet so profound in meaning. It was written by John the Apostle, one of the closest apostles to Christ, along with Peter and James. We don't know when, probably the 60s AD. We're not sure from where or to whom, probably in Asia Minor, both in terms of destination and where it was originated. But really, we just don't know. The congregation doesn't seem to be very Jewish and had a variety of different groups in it of varying maturities, as we'll see as we proceed through the book. We've just gotten into the main purpose of the book, from the theme verse, to know that you are saved in the 5th chapter. And we've covered in verses 3 and 4 of chapter 2 the first rule that a Christian can use to assess him or herself and other people, and that we're obedient. We're obedient to his commands. So again, I'll cover this again. It's very important. All of us fail in our obedience, but the present tense is used here by John, and it's important to realize that in Greek, as in English, it's usually continuous tense. It's what characterizes a person. And generally, when it talks about obedience or sin in the epistles, the apostolic letters, to which we in the church adhere to most strongly in terms of this is what we obey as church members in the times of the church, that it means it's a lifestyle with the recognition that we all sin occasionally. But the true believer lives an obedient life. That's what characterizes him or her, versus a person of sin is generally leading a sinful life. And John makes this first point. He continues in verse 5. We're covering this in verse 6 today, and I'll read it from King James. But whoever keeps his word, in verse 5, in him verily is the love perfected. Hereby we know that we are in him. Verse 6, very interesting. He that saith he abideth in him ought also to walk even as he walked, meaning Christ. So what's it saying? It's adding to verses 3 and 4. If you keep his word, the love of God is perfected. Now it's interesting, perfected here is actually in the perfect tense. It's a tense that in English we use, really it should say, has been perfected. So it was a completed action in the past with results in the present. So does this mean the love of as a Christian, or does it mean the love of God through Christ to salvation? So that might be a point of controversy. And generally in First John, where it talks about God's love for us, it's generally talking about salvation. And in context, he's talking about obedience. So I think it's saying that if you're a person who obey the commands, God's love to us through Christ has been perfected. Otherwise, we're Christians, and by us accepting that salvation by grace alone, given by the love of God through Christ and his death on the cross, then that love meant for us through salvation has been perfected. Otherwise, we're a changed person. Again, this theme is going to be continual through this book. The regeneration, the fact that salvation, the old self died. It's also called spiritual baptism, building on a new man, being born again. The old self died. We were created a new person through the resurrection of Jesus Christ. So that end product, that new person that came, has been perfected, that new person, which came by the love of God through the saving grace of Jesus Christ. So if that's the case, then that person should be walking, that changed person, that new person should be walking as Jesus walked. Now, what does that mean? If you ask most people, what does that mean to walk As Jesus walked, it meant usually it means doing good, or doing good to people, and it's a little difficult because Jesus' mission on earth, and this is important, was very specific. He came to bring salvation and bring the kingdom to the Jews and bring their salvation, and they rejected him. And so from that, then he instituted the concept of the church in Matthew 13 and died for everybody's sins on the cross, and he resurrected. So in the time of the church, we're not commissioned to do the things that Christ was commissioned to do on earth. We don't heal. And I realize that's controversial. We're not prophets. We don't walk around Israel ministering God's word to the Jews. God graciously doesn't ask for us to die on the cross. So, and take everybody's sin as Christ did. So how then do we walk in sort of a trans-cultural, trans-temporal time way to do what Jesus did? Well, I think it really falls down to obedience. Christ was obedient to God, to his death on the cross. He was obedient over his house. As in Philippians 2, Hebrews 3, Hebrews 5, he was obedient to God for his mission. Thus, we are to be obedient to the mission that God has given us to obey his commands and live a life of faith. That's how we walk as Jesus walked, to obey those commands in the epistles, the apostolic letters, and live a life of faith. All right, good stuff. So the review, how we determine one way that we show to ourselves, since we can't see the book of life, and increasing our confidence before God to know that we're saved is if we're living an obedient life, and otherwise to other people as well. Keeping the life is characterized on a general basis that they keep God's commands. Okay, thanks for joining me. We'll get into in the next few verses a second one of the assessments as well. Good stuff. Look forward to seeing you then. Bye-bye.